second because communication being, the solution to all of your problems, it's interesting to me how often we choose the wrong modality of communication to solve the problem. And in COVID isolation, we're defaulting to modalities of communication that are not particularly useful to us. You know, in the old days, if you watch TV and somebody wants to, have a communication with somebody, like if you go back to like the 1800s, you actually had to go to the person's house and look at them face to face and talk to them. Now, it was a lot of trouble to get to that person's house, but the meetup was extraordinary. Today, we don't do that. We have all of these other technology. I blame Matt, really, for everything bad that's happened because technology is the root of all. I'm just kidding. What happens is if you've got a chance to visit with somebody or send them an email, what do? A lot of us send the email, and we should have done the visit. We don't even know it at the time. We only do it because we think the email is going to be, quote, enough to get the job done. But we guess wrong a lot. And it doesn't stop there. We want to send an email, but because texting is quicker and we might get a quicker response, we default to text, which is even a flimsier version of communication, right? Because now we're using abbreviations and mitigated language, and how many times have you got a text from somebody and totally misunderstood? There's no tone, there's no humor, there's no often no etiquette. And so what would happen if instead of choosing text, we picked up the Flintstone phone and made an actual phone call? Yeah, you might get voicemail, but eventually you're going to get the real deal call. Don't forget how the dance works, everybody. In etiquette, in workplace etiquette, if somebody texts you, how are you expected to respond to them? Text. If somebody emails you, how are you supposed to reply? And some people don't get this. Have you ever texted somebody and they email you? Or you email them and then they text you back, and if you've got a few of these going, you lose track of who's Facebook Messenger, LinkedIn message, Instagram. You can't remember who's communicating with you where, and they can really bamboozle you if they're switching platforms. But I do recommend switching platforms under one condition, and that is you're having problems. IT people call it escalation. If you call into IT, they have a certain person designated to take incoming calls. And if that person can't solve it, they escalate to, instead of tier 1, sometimes they call it tier 2. There's different words for this. You should have your own version of this. I mean, serious question here. Take yourselves off mute, answer in chat. How many times do you have to text somebody on the same issue before you actually pick up the damn phone? How many times? I'm interested. Do it with your hand. 4 times? Twice? Show me. Once? Huh? 3 times, Allison? Why 3? Where's that number come from?
I was just thinking if the first text is misunderstood, you might try to clarify in the second text, and then if the third text is also not successful, that's likely when I would decide to try another way.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got their own threshold. Like at some point, I just can't stand it anymore. But I get the impression this guy texts me all afternoon because he's a texter, And I'm like, no, I want we're not. And sometimes I'll do this. I'll call somebody, and before I even say hello, I'll say, hey, I thought I'd call you so we can avoid another 16 rounds of texting. I don't even say hello. And they start laughing and they go, yeah, good idea, And then we get right to it, man. I'll tell you another great technique. It's called the 3-way call. And all of you have the ability to do it. Thumbs up if you've done a 3-way call in the last month. This is one of the most underused techniques on the phone. And it's very easy to do on an iPhone, for example. You're on with somebody and they keep mentioning a third person's name. Sometimes they're even calling you to complain about the other person. And you're like, we need the other person. why are you even calling me? You should be calling the other person. And so I'll say to this guy, I'll say, hey, you've mentioned Debbie's name now 8 times. What do you say we get Debbie on the call? And then I get his silence, like, oh my God, he's going to bring Debbie on and I have to say all the stuff I just said about her. But this is a confrontation, right? This is a wonderful moment. He now has a chance to stare the solution in the face. He has no choice but to say, well, yeah, sure, let's bring Debbie on. He's not crazy about the idea. I say, hang on a second, let me call her up. I press a button that says add call. I dial Debbie's number. Debbie answers. I press a button that says merge calls. I say, Debbie, I'm with Mark. Can you hear me? She says, yeah. Mark, can you hear Debbie? Yeah. So Mark, Debbie, Mark was mentioning your name a few times. I'm going to have him pick up the narrative here. Mark, go ahead with what you were saying. And Mark now has a chance to solve his problem in real time, thanks to yours truly. The 3-way call. It's a beautiful thing, man. If I was running a department these days, I would have the instructions for a 3-way call posted. I would be sending it out every quarter so people were reminded about this great tool. Because think about this. If Mark calls to have you deal with Debbie, I have to hang up with Mark, then I have to call Debbie, then I have to call Mark back. You see all the extra work. And it could have all been handled in one call. And this is a technique, Polly, to deal with COVID, deal with isolation. You don't have the ability, half of your team is not even at the office on any given day. So we have to get more clever about how we're communicating and how we're solving problems.